Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome here to another series for your studies in the vinous world. We are here looking at the wonderful country of Austria in central continental Europe. So, this presentation is for those of you studying your diploma of WSET. So, we are here on the introductory series or the introduction series to Austria. So series one split into 6 parts, and we're looking at part 4 here on the key black grape varieties of Austria. If you have a question, a comment, or you just want to get in touch, maybe about your experiences in Austria or with Austrian wine, then please do so commenting below this video. Okay, well, let's rock and roll looking at the black grape varieties, the key black grape varieties of Austria. We're going to look at 3 major ones. There are many more, like Blauburgunder, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, lots of the international varieties. But we're just going to be looking at the ones I've highlighted on the left-hand side. Now, the chart you see here, the table, is actually the 2022 figures for Austria from Wines of Austria. And we are highlighting there, of course, the importance of Zweigelt, the importance of Blaufränkisch, and then also Sankt Laurent as well. Those 3 combined make up about 21% of the total vineyard area, with, of course, the major player here being the all-important Zweigelt grape variety. So that gives you an idea of what we're looking at. We'll talk about Zweigelt first, then go on to Blaufränkisch, and then finally on Sankt Laurent at the end. So here we go. Now, I am not going to go through a dramatic amount of history about Zweigelt, because I actually did mention this in one of the earlier videos when we talked about the creation of this crossing. So it is today the most planted grape variety, just under 14% of the total production. And as we mentioned earlier, it's up there on the slide as well. It is a crossing of Sankt Laurent and Blaufränkisch. Now, this variety is quite well liked, specifically because it ripens early, meaning, of course, in a cold climate, it is actually quite consistent. So it's an easier ripener than its real sort of competitor, which is Blaufränkisch. It's a vigorous variety and it can be high yielding. So it's very important that leaf removal, even bunch removal, and canopy management techniques are employed with this grape variety in order to produce quality grapes. Otherwise, it can be rather light and also quite herbaceous. Other key things about Zweigelt. So it is widely planted, as we know. And that's mainly due to its ease of ripening, but it's also not too susceptible to frost or rot with slightly looser bunches. So this means, of course, it's quite consistent in a viticultural sense as well. There is an issue around potassium. The potassium deficiency in this variety can lead to a withering of the grapes before they ripen, and that could lead to a loss of crop for that vintage, of course. What do we expect it to taste like? Well, wines that are made from Zweigelt generally have quite high levels of acidity, typically sort of medium plus or high, with softer tannins, typically somewhere between low to medium. You will find it packed full of red fruits, particularly cherry, and that gives you that real sort of bright juiciness, but it does border on sort of raspberry, also to brambly characters as well. You can find a little bit of spice in there, and of course, with the underripe expressions or cooler vintages, it can be a little bit herbaceous. These styles do range from those early drinking, fruity, unoaked examples, which typically are somewhere around acceptable to good, and then we find them being sort of inexpensive or mid-priced. And then we do get the ones that are more concentrated from fruit that has been, of course, reduced by lower yields, by actions in the vineyard, for example, older vines. So you get some fuller expressions which can be oaky and have the possibility for aging. Now, those styles are typically good, and they can be very good, and they command more sort of medium to premium price points. Okay, so that's Zweigelt complete. Do let me know if you have tried some Zweigelt and if you have some recommends of key producers. The next grape variety is a variety which is often lauded as the black grape variety to put Austria on the map for premium quality. And this is Blaufränkisch. Now, from the Middle Ages onwards, the name Fränkisch, that last part of the name of the grape, was actually given to several high quality varieties, indicating their superiority over the inferior Hunnisch varieties. So that's an important immediate distinction to make, that actually its etymology derives from a really core higher quality set of grapes. Now, the word Fränkisch derives from, of course, Franconia, which is a historic region of Germany that today straddles parts of Bavaria, for example. So that's kind of its birth of its name. You will find this grape variety being called multiple things across most of Europe. I've put two of the key synonyms there on the slide and given you two bottle shots as well. So Frankos from Hungary, you'll see excellent producer here, and Lemberger or Limburger from Germany that you'll see on the right hand side. Some good expressions there. Both of those bottlings are exceptional. Now, what about the characteristics of this variety? Now, Blaufränkisch is an early budding variety, making it actually quite vulnerable to spring frosts. It also ripens late, so therefore it has a long season. So it needs a warm climate to become fully ripe. So therefore, this grape variety is generally found in the warmest parts of Austria, typically on the Hungarian border. There's your connection to Frankos. So on the Hungarian border, where you get the Pannonian climate warmth, but plus the lake warming effect here as well. So typically in that far eastern part of Austria, bordering Hungary, is the famed part for Blaufränkisch. Now, it has nice thick skins, meaning it doesn't really suffer with rot as much as other varieties, which is quite important around the humid parts of that eastern section around the Neudersee Lake. It can produce high yields, and if left to do so, it can struggle to ripen the whole crop, and that can create wines that have that kind of green character again. But when yields are managed of this potentially very high quality grape variety, you will find it making some of Austria's most age-worthy red wines that have lovely concentration and develop a wonderful breadth of complexity as well. What would you expect in terms of aromas and flavours? So we know it's the second most planted black grape variety. It tends to produce wines with fairly high levels of tannins, typically medium plus to high levels of acidity, with deep dark colour and typically black fruit. You might find sort of red cherried elements in some of them, slightly elegant expressions, and you might find a little bit of black pepper spice as well. But the wines will range from simple fruity wines with little or no oak aging, which typically are good and are mid-priced. And then the ones that are more complex, which are very good to outstanding with pronounced black fruit that have this kind of spicy oak character and that black pepper or licorice. You will find that, of course, the structure is with those wines as well, lots of tannic capability. I often find these wines a little bit difficult to enjoy in their youth, so you will need some aging behind them. Look out for the Lietherberg DAC and the Mittelburgenland DAC as prime areas for this grape variety. And our third grape is the Sankt Laurent grape variety. Now, it most likely originates from Austria, where we know it's been cultivated with, of course, information that we have found since around the 19th century, the early part. Now, its etymology, the naming, Sankt Laurent, doesn't sound so Austrian. It sounds a bit more French in origin, but it's actually probably from Old Austrian dialect like Laurensittertraube, which refers to Saint Laurentius, the patron saint of chefs, so a cook, whose saint's day falls on the 10th of August. And that's apparently when the variety begins to ripen, so veraison. Now, despite its style, which is often very much likened to Pinot Noir, it is genetically distant from Pinot Noir. So it is not the same, nor is it anything like it genetically. It's mid-ripening, has good resistance to winter frosts, important in some parts of Austria, but it is susceptible to things like couleur, so shedding of the blossom. And that's thanks to the early flowering, which puts it really at a problem with earlier spring weather. You'll find botrytis bunch rot and downy mildew being issues as well. It will need soils that are fairly deep, and irrigation could be a possibility. And it's also at a risk from late frosts in the year. Yields can be rather erratic, and that's one of the major reasons why this variety is actually very minor in total vineyard plantings. And also, being quite a fragile grape variety, September rainfall can cause a little bit of sort of expansion in the grape, leading to splitting and rotting as well. Now, I mentioned earlier that Sankt Laurent is genetically very distant from Pinot Noir, but character-wise, style-wise, it's actually fairly similar. It has a medium-minus body, medium tannins, and full of red fruits, often cherries, strawberries, raspberries. Often it has a bit more of a softness and a savoury element in comparison to Pinot Noir. But they will be aged in oak, giving flavours of spice, and they're typically good to very good and are mid-price. There's a lot of excitement around this grape variety. Okay, well, that brings me to a conclusion of looking at the key black grape varieties. Please do join me for part 5, looking at the winemaking techniques employed across the white, reds, and other styles of wines. And then finally, part 6 on wine laws. Both of those videos are only available to my subscribers of my e-learning portal. That's over at winewithjimmy.com. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Good luck with your studies, and I will see you on the other side. So ciao for now. Goodbye.